Today we are going to do a tier list for graded video games. So it is going to be broken down with cardboard games on the left and DVD, modern, jewel cases on the right. And that's because there is nuance in how cardboard games are treated and how cardboard games get wear compared to hard cases. So in a general sense, most people prefer the box grade to be higher when we're talking about cardboard, and more emphasis goes to the seal grade when we're talking about hard cases. There also is this wonderful WATA crossover article 2.0 that was published by Jonas. If you're not following Jonebone on Instagram already, I do recommend it. I'll have his link in the description. But this looks at actual crossover data of VGA games that were sent to WATA. This features over 1,500 data points going from VGA 75 all the way up to VGA 95. So it's a pretty good resource. But the biggest limitation with the resource is it's almost all cardboard games that were swapped over. There's a little bit of jewel case and a little bit of clamshell, but for the most part, it is a cardboard analysis. As an example, you can see this is for VGA 80+. The most likely outcomes if you send an 80+ into WATA, 9.4A as well as 9.2A. Very slight chance of 9.6A+, with even one 9.8A+. But as we said, if you see these big outliers, it could be that that one is a jewel case cross. Jewel cases and hard cases are going to cross over differently than cardboard. Like I said, there's nuance between how cardboard's treated versus hard cases. But with that out of the way, I just want to say thank you to every single Patreon who helps support the channel, as well as the YouTube members. I can't do this without you guys. Hit the like button. And let's start with the first tier of games here, where I don't think anyone's going to disagree. On cardboard, I linked them all together. If you get a 10, if you get a 100 on cardboard, it's incredible. For hard cases, I do think it is harder to get the 100 than the CGC 10 and the WATA 10, but we have to wait for the actual pop reports to come out before we can fully confirm that. But anecdotally speaking, the VGA 100, even with Switch games, seems to be way harder to get than the WATA 10 or the CGC 10. And then with DVD style games, again, I do trust the 95+ even more than the CGC 9.9A++. I think VGA is way harder than any other company when it comes to seal grades. So even if it's a CGC 9.9 where you have a perfect hard case on the game, I just think the 95+, where you're going to also have a perfect case, is going to have a harder rated seal than the CGC A++. Over on cardboard, I think they're the same. If you get a 95+, if by some chance you get a 9.9A++, both are freaking incredible, and both are slightly above the 95. And then of course, 9.8A++ across both companies. And with cardboard and DVD cases, I do think the 9.8A++ is below the 95. Some people might disagree with that. I'm sure you can find arguments either way for some 95s being nicer than other 9.8A++s. If we go to the actual crossover data, which only has 26 VGA 95 examples, 13 out of the 26 hit on 9.8A++. And one of them even crossed to a 10.0. So if you can turn a VGA 95 into a 10.0 on only 26 examples, the 95 is pretty darn good. But that's how I break down the incredible grades. The next tier is where we might have some disagreements. This tier is still absolutely what I would call mint games. Beautiful grades, but more achievable than those tiers above. With cardboard and hard cases, I do have the 90+ being the top of this tier, and I do have 90+ above 9.8A+ and 9.6A++. Because if you have a 90+ out of only 64 examples again, you basically have a 33% chance of turning that into a 9.8A++. Or just hold the 90+ as is. It's absolutely beautiful grade. And then we get the biggest debate of them all. I did put the 9.8A+ above the 9.6A++. And I didn't want my opinion to be the only opinion on this one, so I did even go and ask in a dedicated Sealed Games Facebook group. And with almost 100 votes, the 9.8A+ does have the slight edge for which one people would be willing to pay more for. There absolutely are people on the 9.6A++ side of the debate. It depends if you value the nuanced box grade more than the nuanced seal grade. It also does depend if you have a very nice A+ versus kind of a junk A+. The A+ seal grade in itself does have a lot of variance, so always make sure you're actually looking at the item itself, not just what the label says. And I even put it above the VGA 90 at that point because I think the 9.8A+ on the open market would outsell the VGA 90. The actual data shows that out of 165 data points, 31 of them did cross to 9.8A++. So if you do have a VGA 90 on a cardboard game, it is still a beautiful, beautiful game. But you also do run the risk that it could turn into a 9.6A+, it could turn into a 9.4A++. Those are both very alive options as well, and for that reason, I would rather lock in the 9.8 myself if I'm going to be paying up for it. On the DVD side of things, I would rather have VGA 90+ and 90 before we get into the 9.8A+ or 9.6A++. Like I said with the VGA 100, VGA is just so hard on those seals, and there is that bit of preference again. Do you value the box grade more than the seal grade? But if you are going to cross to VGA, if you're like, oh man, I want to get a high grade VGA game, you should purchase the 9.6A++ every time versus the 9.8A+. The odds of you crossing high to VGA if you have that plus plus are much higher. The next tier of games here, and this is where it gets a little bit more subjective and you're gonna find more variance even amongst the grades themselves. These are like your near mint slash mint types of games. Generally speaking, these are all gonna present very, very nice. With cardboard games, I did put the 9.8A above everything else. And this is because of what I see the market actually doing with these games. When it comes to cardboard, there just is more emphasis on the box grade being nice, especially if the box grade says 9.8. 9.8 vintage cardboard is not easy at all. So I did put that above the 9.6A plus, and I did put that above the 85 plus. And I put 9.6A plus above the 85 plus because if we go to the chart here, 9.6A plus is the most likely outcome if you have an 85 plus. You are also on the line. It could be a 9.6A, a 9.4A. 9.4A plus is also very likely outcome. If you know how to assess an 85 plus, it can absolutely be nicer than a 9.6A plus. But if you don't have good pictures, if you just have to go off of the label, I would rather lock in the 9.6A plus rather than gamble on the 85 plus. And then below that, the 9.4A plus plus, which is still a beautiful grade. That could even be a case fresh cardboard game where it just has a slight crease in it. On the hard case side of things, I do have 85 plus above all of those other grades. Again, I'm beating a dead horse here, but with how hard VGA is on those seals, the odds of you going to a 9.6A plus plus, 9.6A plus, 9.8A plus if you have an 85 plus type game are very, very good. I personally turned a VGA 85 GameCube game into a 9.6A plus. Above 85, I do have the 9.6A plus as well as the 9.4A plus plus. If you can just buy one of those grades for the same price as an 85, I don't really see the point in gambling. And again, if you're looking to cross a high grade WATA, get the A plus plus seal rating. 9.4A plus plus has the higher chance of crossing to a nice VGA grade. Make sure to look at the item the best you can. So for cardboard games, I actually did put the VGA 85 down one tier. And this is because when I look at the grades above it, the 9.4A plus plus, 85 plus, 9.6A plus, they all just feel like they are that extra degree of mint when we're talking about cardboard. You see that the actual cross data on 85, the most likely outcome is the 9.4A plus, with 9.6A plus being the second most common, but third most common is 9.2A plus, and you have a lot more downside risk than you do upside risk at the 85 level. For that reason, I put it at the top of this tier, which is near mint games. And right underneath it, I do have the 9.4A plus, and that's because the 85 does still have the high grade WATA CGC upside. If you know how to assess that 85, it could be way nicer than a 9.4A plus. And then underneath it is where I start considering box versus seal nuance. I think a 9.6A is close to a 9.2A plus plus. I think there'll be people on both sides of this debate. Would you rather have a really nice box at 9.6 or would you rather have a really nice seal at 9.2? Over on the hard case side of things where seal is more emphasized, I put the 9.4A plus and the 9.2A plus plus in the same tier. I do think it's enough to go down one box rating to go up one seal rating when we're talking about hard cases specifically. I also did put the 9.4A plus and the 9.2A plus plus above the 9.8A. There might be some of you out there who really just want the box grade at this point if you're only getting a 9.4 or a 9.2 anyway, but this comes from the analysis of, okay, what would a 9.8A cross to if we're going to send it to VGA? And realistically, you're probably going to end up with a VGA 80 plus. You're probably not even getting a VGA 85 out of that. When you get down to an A seal rating on a DVD style game, it's not going to be that nice. It's fully possible that the 9.8A would outsell these grades right above it. I think they're very close. Heck, the 9.8A might even outsell the VGA 85 for some people. But realistically speaking, these grades above the 9.8A should all be nicer overall condition games. And right underneath that is the 80 plus. Once you get down to the 80 plus and the 80 level with VGA, it really matters if the case has cracks in it or damage or if the seal has a rip in it. You could turn an 80 plus all the way up to a 9.8A, like I said. Or you could have a cracked case that has a beautiful seal, in which case you might turn your 80 plus into like an 8.0 A plus plus. For that reason, I would much rather lock in a 9.8 than risk anything that has cracks. But that's just assuming a blind analysis, right? Always look at the item. The next tier here, which is just below your near mint level, I made this an extremely tight band for cardboard because when I was breaking it down in my head, I just see all of these grades as better than the next tier lower. So the 9.4A and the 9.2A plus, those get their own tier over on the cardboard side. Over on the DVD side of things, we have the 9.6A, then the 9.2A plus, then your VGA 80, then your 9.4A. I'm really curious to see what you guys think of this breakdown here on the DVD side of things. If you're looking for a VGA crossover, the 9.2A plus still might do better, but if we're leaving them purely in the WATA CGC cases, I would rather pay more for the 9.6A at this point. And underneath those, you have the VGA 80, in which case it could be really nice, in which case it could be really low. Again, it just kind of depends what you're dealing with, which is why I put it at this level. And underneath that, the 9.4A, but realistically, VGA 80, 9.4A, those are getting really close to each other. Just depends if you have structural damage versus big rips. And the final tiers on both sides, which really are like the minimum grades you should be aiming for if you're submitting something. There's always going to be stuff that's worth sending no matter what grade it's in, but generally speaking, you should at least be trying to hit that 9.0A or the VGA 80. And then at the bottom here, there's anything with B+. If you're someone who values that 9.8 regardless of the seal grade, the 9.8 B+ could go at the same level as a 9.4A+ if that's where you value it. Technically speaking, if you do have a B+ seal grade, you're in like the bottom 13% of all games graded, but again, it just depends how much emphasis you want to place on that B+ seal grade. And with Cardboard, I did put the 9.2 as well as the 9.0 above VGA 80 and 80+. Again, I would rather just lock in the structural niceness rather than gambling on the 80+ or the 80. And realistically, between a VGA 80 and a 9.0A, you're going to find ones on both sides that look great compared to the others, so it's really a toss-up at that point. And on the hard case side of things, I have VGA 80 much above the 9.2 and the 9.0A. As far as hard cases go, there's just really nothing that's going to be wrong with the VGA 80 to a degree where I wouldn't think it's just going to cross over higher than the 9.2 or the 9.0. The biggest thing you could have is cracks. So if we're talking about cracks on a VGA 80, then yes, you want to take your 9.2 or your 9.0A instead of that. Cracks are like the #1 structural damage that you really don't want to touch. But if we're assuming no cracks, the 80 level should always cross to something in the 9.0 to 9.4 range, which is why I have it so much higher on the hard case side. With DVD style games, in my opinion, if you have a B+, it's kind of really bad. But again, it just depends how much you emphasize the seal grade. But hopefully these lists help you out. I will also have them linked in the description of the video if you ever want to look at them again. Let me know the biggest things you disagree with on this list. Truly, I want to hear your opinions as well. Hit the like button, and I will see you guys in the next video. Goodbye.